Hello everyone. Question is, you are developing a hands-on workshop to introduce Docker for Windows to attendees. You need to ensure that workshop attendees can install Docker on their devices. Which two prerequisite components should attendees install on their devices? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Option A, Microsoft Hardware Assisted Virtualization Detection Tool. Option B, Kitematic. Option C, BIOS enabled virtualization. Option D, VirtualBox. Option E, Windows 10 64-bit Professional. Correct answer is option C and option E. Question is, your team is building a data engineering and data science development environment. The environment must support the following requirements. First, support Python and Scala. Second, compose data storage, movement, and processing services into automated data pipelines. Third, the same tools should be used for the orchestration of both data engineering and data science. Fourth, support workload isolation and interactive workloads. Fifth, enable scaling across a cluster of machines you need to create the environment. What should you do? Option A, build the environment in Apache Hive for HD Insight and use Azure Data Factory for orchestration. Option B, build the environment in Azure Databricks and use Azure Data Factory for orchestration. Option C, build the environment in Apache Spark for HD Insight and use Azure Container Instances for orchestration. Option D, build the environment in Azure Databricks and use Azure Container Instances for orchestration. Correct answer is option B. Question is, drag and drop. You are building an intelligent solution using machine learning models. The environment must support the following requirements. First, data scientists must build notebooks in a cloud environment. Second, data scientists must use automatic feature engineering and model building in machine learning pipelines. Option 3. Notebooks must be deployed to retain using Spark instances with dynamic worker allocation. Fourth, notebooks must be exportable to be version controlled locally. You need to create the environment. Which four actions should you perform in sequence? To answer, move the appropriate actions from the list of actions to the answer area and arrange them in the correct order. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is, you plan to build a team data science environment. Data for training models in machine learning pipelines will be over 20 GB in size. You have the following requirements. First, models must be built using Caffe2 or Chainer frameworks. Second, data scientists must be able to use a data science environment to build the machine learning pipelines and train models on their personal devices in both connected and disconnected network environments. Personal devices must support updating machine learning pipelines when connected to a network. You need to select a data science environment. Which environment should you use? Option A, Azure Machine Learning Service. Option B, Azure Machine Learning Studio. Option C, Azure Databricks. Option D. Azure Kubernetes Service AKS. Correct answer is option A. Question is the data science virtual machine DSVM is a customized VM image on Microsoft's Azure cloud built specifically for doing data science. Cafe 2 and Chainer are supported by DSVM. DSVM integrates with Azure Machine Learning. Use Machine Learning Studio when you want to experiment with machine learning models quickly and easily, and the built-in machine learning algorithms are sufficient for your solutions. You are implementing a machine learning model to predict stock prices. The model uses a PostgreSQL database and requires GPU processing. You need to create a virtual machine that is pre-configured with the required tools. What should you do? Option A. Create a data science virtual machine DSVM Windows Edition. Option B. Create a Geo AI data science virtual machine Geo DSVM Windows Edition. Option C. Create a deep learning virtual machine DLVM Linux Edition. Option D. Create a deep learning virtual machine DLVM Windows Edition. Correct answer is option A. Question is you are developing deep learning models to analyze semi-structured, unstructured and structured data types. You have the following data available for model building. First, video recordings of sporting events. Second, transcripts of radio commentary about events. Third, logs from related social media feeds captured during sporting events. You need to select an environment for creating the model. Which environment should you use? Option A. Azure Cognitive Services. Option B. Azure Data Lake Analytics. Option C. Azure HD Insight with Spark MLib. Option D. Azure Machine Learning Studio. Correct answer is option A. Question is you are moving a large dataset from Azure Machine Learning Studio to a Veka environment. You need to format the data for the Veka environment. Which modules should you use? Option A. Convert to CSV. Option B. Convert to dataset. Option C. Convert to ARFF. Option D. Convert to SVM Lite. Correct answer is option C. Question is you plan to create a speech recognition deep learning model. The model must support the latest version of Python. You need to recommend a deep learning framework for speech recognition to include in the data science virtual machine DSVM. What should you recommend? Option A. Rattle. Option B. TensorFlow. Option C. Veka. Option D. Scikit-learn. Scikit-learn. Correct answer is option B. Question is you plan to use a deep learning virtual machine DLVM to train deep learning models using Compute Unified Device Architecture CUDA computations. You need to configure the DLVM to support CUDA. What should you implement? Option A. Solid state drives SSD. Option B. Computer processing unit CPU speed increase by using overclocking. Option C. Graphic processing unit GPU. Option D. High random access memory RAM configuration. Option E. Intel software guard extensions Intel SGX technology. Correct answer is option C. Question is you plan to use a data science virtual machine DSVM with the open source deep learning frameworks Cafe 2 and PyTorch. You need to select a pre-configured DSVM to support the frameworks. What should you create? Option A, Data Science Virtual Machine for Windows 2012. Option B, Data Science Virtual Machine for Linux, CentOS. Option C, Geo AI Data Science Virtual Machine with ArcGIS. Option D, Data Science Virtual Machine for Windows 2016. Option E, Data Science Virtual Machine for Linux Ubuntu. Correct answer is option E. Question is, you are performing sentiment analysis using a CSV file that includes 12,000 customer reviews written in a short sentence format. You add the CSV file to Azure Machine Learning Studio and configure it as the starting point dataset of an experiment. You add the extract n-gram features from text module to the experiment to extract key phrases from the customer review column in the dataset. You must create a new n-gram dictionary from the customer review text and set the maximum n-gram size to diagrams. What should you select? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. Question is, you are developing a data science workspace that uses an Azure machine learning service. You need to select a compute target to deploy the workspace. What should you use? Option A, Azure Data Lake Analytics. Option B, Azure Databricks. Option C, Azure Container Service. Option D, Apache Spark for HD Insight. Correct answer is option C. Question is, you are solving a classification task. The dataset is imbalanced. You need to select an Azure Machine Learning Studio module to improve the classification accuracy. Which module should you use? Option A, Permutation Feature Importance. Option B, Filter-Based Feature Selection. Option C, Fisher Linear Discriminant Analysis. Option D, Synthetic Minority Oversampling Technique SMOTE. Correct answer is option D. Question is, drag and drop. You configure a deep learning virtual machine for Windows. You need to recommend tools and frameworks to perform the following. First, build deep neural network DNN models. Second, perform interactive data exploration and visualization. Which tools and frameworks should you recommend? To answer, drag the appropriate tools to the correct task. Each tool may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Please see this section. Question is, you use Azure Machine Learning Studio to build a machine learning experiment. You need to divide data into two distinct data sets. Which module should you use? Option A, assign data to clusters. Option B, load trained model. Option C, partition and sample. Option D, tune model hyperparameters. Correct answer is option C. Question is drag and drop. You are creating an experiment by using Azure Machine Learning Studio. You must divide the data into four subsets for evaluation. There is a high degree of missing values in the data. You must prepare the data for analysis. You need to select appropriate methods for producing the experiment. Which three modules should you run in sequence? To answer, move the appropriate actions from the list of actions to the answer area and arrange them in the correct order. Please see this section. Question is, you are retrieving data from a large data store by using Azure Machine Learning Studio. You must create a subset of the data for testing purposes using a random sampling seed based on the system clock. You add the partition and sample module to your experiment. You need to select the properties for the module. Which value should you select? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is, you are creating a machine learning model. You have a data set that contains null rows. You need to use the clean missing data module in Azure Machine Learning Studio to identify and resolve the null and missing data in the dataset. Which parameters should you use? Option A, replace with mean. Option B, remove entire column. Option C, remove entire row. Option D, hot deck. Option E, custom substitution value. Option F, replace with mode. Correct answer is option C. Question is, the finance team asks you to train a model using data in an Azure storage blob container named finance data. You need to register the container as a data stored in an Azure machine learning workspace and ensure that an error will be raised if the container does not exist. How should you complete the code? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is, you plan to provision an Azure Machine Learning Basic Edition workspace for a data science project. You need to identify the tasks you will be able to perform in the workspace. Which three tasks will you be able to perform? Option A, create a compute instance and use it to run code in Jupyter notebooks. Option B, create an Azure Kubernetes service aka inference cluster. Option C, use the designer to train a model by dragging and dropping predefined modules. Option D, create a tabular dataset that supports versioning. Option E, use the automated machine learning user interface to train a model. Correct answer is option A. Question is, a coworker registers a data store in a machine learning services workspace by using the following code. You need to write code to access the data store from a notebook. How should you complete the code segment? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is, a set of CSV files contains skills records. All the CSV files have the same data schema. Each CSV file contains the sales record for a particular month and has the file name sales.csv. Each file is stored in a folder that indicates the month and year when the data was recorded. The folders are in an Azure Blob container for which a data store has been defined in an Azure Machine Learning workspace. The folders are organized in a parent folder named Cells to create the following hierarchical structure. At the end of each month, a new folder with that month's sales file is added to the sales folder. You plan to use the sales data to train a machine learning model based on the following requirements. First, you must define a dataset that loads all of the sales data to data into a structure that can be easily converted to a data frame. Second, you must be able to create experiments that use only data that was created before a specific previous month, ignoring any data that was added after that month. Third, you must register the minimum number of data sets possible. You need to register the sales data as a dataset in Azure Machine Learning Service Workspace. What should you do? Option A. Create a tabular dataset that references the data store and explicitly specifies each cell in this format .csv file every month. Register the dataset with the name cells_dataset each month, replacing the existing dataset and specifying a tag named month indicating the month and year it was registered. Use this dataset for all experiments. Option B. Create a tabular dataset that references the data store and specifies the path this. Register the dataset with the name cells_dataset and a tag named month indicating the month and year it was registered, and use this dataset for all experiments. Option C. Create a new tabular dataset that references the data store and explicitly specifies each this .csv file every month. Register the datasets with the name cells_dataset _mm hyphen YYYY each month with appropriate mm and YYYY values for the month and year. Use the appropriate month-specific dataset for experiments. Option D. Create a tabular dataset that references the data store and explicitly specifies each this .csv file. Register the dataset with the name cells_dataset each month as a new version and with a tag named month indicating the month and year it was registered. Use this dataset for all experiments, identifying the version to be used based on the month tag as necessary. Correct answer is option B. Question is drag and drop. An organization uses Azure Machine Learning Service and wants to expand their use of machine learning. You have the following compute environments. The organization does not want to create another compute environment. You need to determine which compute environment to use for the following scenarios. Which compute types should you use? To answer, drag the appropriate compute environments to the correct scenarios. Each compute environment may be used once, more than once, or not at all. You may need to drag the split bar between the panes or scroll to view the content. Please see this section. Question is, you create an Azure Machine Learning compute target named Compute1 by using the standard underscore D1 virtual machine image. Compute1 is currently idle and has 0 active nodes. You define a Python variable named ws that references the Azure Machine Learning workspace. You run the following Python code. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. First statement is a new machine learning compute resource is created with a virtual machine size of this and a maximum of 4 nodes. Options are yes or no. Second statement is any experiments configured to use the underscore cluster will run on compute 1. Options are yes or no. Third statement is the next step 1 will be printed to the screen. Options are yes or no. Correct answer for the first statement is yes. Correct answer for the second statement is also yes. Correct answer for the third statement is no. Question is, you are developing a deep learning model by using TensorFlow. You plan to run the model training workload on an Azure Machine Learning compute instance. You must use CUDA-based model training. You need to provision the compute instance. Which two virtual machine sizes can you use? To answer, select the appropriate virtual machine sizes in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Drag and drop. You are analyzing raw data that requires cleaning. You must perform transformations and manipulations by using Azure Machine Learning Studio. You need to identify the correct modules to perform the transformations. Which modules should you choose? To answer, drag the appropriate modules to correct the scenario. Each module may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is, you are using Azure Machine Learning Studio to perform feature engineering on a dataset. You need to normalize values to produce a feature column grouped into bins. Solution: apply an entropy minimum description length (MDL) binning mode. Does the solution meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is option A, yes. Question is, you are preparing to use the Azure ML SDK to run an experiment and need to create compute. You run the following code. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. First statement is if a compute cluster named AML cluster already exists in the workspace, it will be deleted and replaced. Options are yes or no. Second statement is this method will not return until the AML cluster compute has 4 active nodes. Options are yes or no. Third statement is if the code creates a new AML cluster compute target, it may be preempted due to the capacity constraints. Options are yes or no. Fourth statement is the AML cluster compute target is deleted from the workspace after the training experiment completes. Options are yes or no. Correct answer for the first statement is no. Correct answer for the second statement is yes. Correct answer for the third statement is also yes. Correct answer for the fourth statement is no. You can download the complete list of recently updated contents from the link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Question is you are a data scientist using Azure Machine Learning Studio. You need to normalize values to produce an output column into bins to predict a target column. Solution: apply a quantiles normalization with a quantile index normalization. Does the solution meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is option B, no. Question is you are analyzing a dataset by using Azure Machine Learning Studio. You need to generate a statistical summary that contains the p-value and the unique count for each feature column. Which two modules can you use? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option A, computer linear correlation. Option B, export count table. Option C, execute Python script. Option D, convert to indicator values. Option E, summarize data. Correct answer is option B. Question is you are creating a machine learning model in Python. The provided dataset contains several numerical columns and one text column. The text column represents a product's category. The product category will always be one of the following. First, bikes. Second, cars. Third, vans. Fourth, boats. You are building a regression model using the scikit-learn Python package. You need to transform the text data to be compatible with the scikit-learn Python package. How should you complete the code segment? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is you are analyzing a numerical dataset which contains missing values in several columns. You must clean the missing values using an appropriate operation without affecting the dimensionality of the feature set. You need to analyze a full dataset to include all values. Solution: replace each missing value using the multiple imputation by chained equations MICE method. Does the solution meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is option A, yes. Question is you use Azure Machine Learning Studio to build a machine learning experiment. You need to divide data into two distinct datasets. Which modules should you use? Option A, split data. Option B, load trained model. Option C. Assign data to clusters. Option D. Group data into bins. Correct answer is option D. Question is you are analyzing a numerical data set which contains missing values in several columns. You must clean the missing values using an appropriate operation without affecting the dimensionality of the feature set. You need to analyze a full data set to include all values. Solution: calculate the column median value and use the median value as the replacement for any missing value in the column. Does the solution meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is option B, no. Question is you are evaluating a Python NumPy array that contains 6 data points defined as follows. You must generate the following output by using the k-fold algorithm. Implementation in the Python scikit-learn machine learning library, that is this. You need to implement a cross-validation to generate the output. How should you complete the code segment? To answer, select the appropriate code segment in the dialog box in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is you are preparing to build a deep learning convolutional neural network model for image classification. You create a script to train the model using CUDA devices. You must submit an experiment that runs this script in the Azure Machine Learning workspace. The following compute resources are available. First, a Microsoft Surface device on which Microsoft Office has been installed. Corporate IT policies prevent the installation of the additional software. Second, a compute instance named DS Workstation in the workspace with 2 CPUs and 8 GB of memory. Third, an Azure Machine Learning compute target named CPU cluster with 8 CPU-based nodes. Fourth, an Azure Machine Learning compute target named GPU cluster with 4 CPU and GPU-based nodes. You need to specify the compute resources to be used for running the code to submit the experiment and for running the script in order to minimize model training time. Which resources should the data scientist use? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is you have a data set that contains 2000 rows. You are building a machine learning classification model by using Azure Learning Studio. You add a partition and sample module to the experiment. You need to configure the module. You must meet the following requirements. First, divide the data into subsets. Second, assign the rows into folds using a round-robin method. Third, allow rows in the dataset to be reused. How should you configure the module? To answer, select the appropriate options in the dialog box in the answer area. Question is, you have an Azure machine learning workspace named Workspace 1 that is accessible from a public endpoint. The workspace contains an Azure Blob Storage data store named Store1 that represents a blob container in an Azure storage account named Account1. You configure Workspace 1 and Account 1 to be accessible by using private endpoints in the same virtual network. You must be able to access the contents of Store 1 by using the Azure Machine Learning SDK for Python. You must be able to preview the contents of Store 1 by using Azure Machine Learning Studio. You need to configure Store 1. What should you do? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is, you create a data store named training_data that references a blob container in an Azure storage account. The blob container contains a folder named csv_files in which multiple comma separated values CSV files are stored. You have a script named train.py in a local folder named this that you plan to run as an experiment using an estimator. The script includes the following code to read data from the csv_files folder. You have the following script. You need to configure the estimator for the experiment so that the script can read the data from a data reference named data_ref that references the csv_files folder in the training_data data store. Which code should you use to configure the estimator? Please see the options. Correct answer is option B. Question is, you plan to use hyperdrive to optimize the hyperparameters selected when training a model. You create the following code to define options for the hyperparameter experiment. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. First statement is, there will be 50 runs for this hyperparameter tuning experiment. Options are yes or no. Second statement is, you can use the policy parameter in the hyperdrive config class to specify a security policy. Options are yes or no. Third statement is, the experiment will create a run for every possible value for the learning rate parameter between 0.05 and 0.15. Options are yes or no. Correct answer for the first statement is no. Correct answer for the second statement is yes. Correct answer for the third statement is no. Question is, you create a script for training a machine learning model in Azure Machine Learning Service. You create an estimator by running the following code. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. First statement is the estimator will look for the files it needs to run an experiment in the training experiment directory of the local compute environment. Options are yes or no. Second statement is the estimator will mount the local data folder and make it available to the script through a parameter. Options are yes or no. Third statement is the train.py script file will be created if it does not exist. Options are yes or no. Fourth statement is the estimator can run scikit-learn experiments. Options are yes or no. Correct answer for the first statement is yes. Correct answer for the second statement is yes. Correct answer for the third statement is no. Correct answer for the fourth statement is yes. Question is you write a Python script that processes data in a comma-separated value CSV file. You plan to run this script as an Azure machine learning experiment. The script loads the data and determines the number of rows it contains using the following code. You need to record the row count as a metric named row underscore count that can be returned using the get underscore metrics method of the run object after the experiment run completes. Which code should you use? Please see the options. Correct answer is option B. Question is you create a multi-class image classification deep learning model that uses the PyTorch deep learning framework. You must configure Azure Machine Learning Hyperdrive to optimize the hyperparameters for the classification model. You need to define a primary metric to determine the hyperparameter values that result in the model with the best accuracy score. Which three actions must you perform? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Option A set the primary underscore metric underscore goal of the estimator used to run the bird underscore classifier underscore train.py script to maximize. Option B add code to the bird underscore classifier underscore train.py script to calculate the validation loss of the model and log it as a float value with the key loss. Option C set the primary underscore metric underscore goal of the estimator used to run the bird underscore classifier underscore train.py script to minimize. Option D set the primary underscore metric underscore name of the estimator used to run the bird underscore classifier underscore train.py script to accuracy. Option E set the primary underscore metric underscore name of the estimator used to run the bird underscore classifier underscore train.py scripts to loss. Option F add code to the bird underscore classifier underscore train.py script to calculate the validation accuracy of the model and log it as a float value with the key accuracy. Correct answer is option A. Question is you are performing a filter-based feature selection for a dataset to build a multi-class classifier by using Azure Machine Learning Studio. The dataset contains categorical features that are highly correlated to the output label column. You need to select the appropriate feature scoring statistical method to identify the key predictors. Which method should you use? Option A Kendall correlation. Option B Spearman correlation. Option C chi-squared. Option D Pearson correlation. Correct answer is option D. Question is you are using the Azure machine learning services to automate hyperparameter exploration of your neural network classification model. You must define the hyperparameter space to automatically tune hyperparameters using random sampling according to following requirements. First, the learning rate must be selected from a normal distribution with a mean value of 10 and a standard deviation of 3. Second, batch size must be 16, 32, and 64. Third, key probability must be a value selected from a uniform distribution between the range of 0.05 and zero point 0.1. You need to use the param_sampling method of the Python API for the Azure Machine Learning Service. How should you complete the code segment? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is you are evaluating a completed binary classification machine learning model. You need to use the precision as the evaluation metric. Which visualization should you use? Option A violin plot. Option B gradient descent. Option C scatter plot. Option D receiver operating characteristic ROC curve. Correct answer is option D. Question is you register a file dataset named csv_folder that references a folder. The folder includes multiple comma separated values CSV files in an Azure storage blob container. You plan to use the following code to run a script that loads data from the file dataset. You create and instantiate the following variables. You have the following code. You need to pass the dataset to ensure that the script can read the files it references. Which code segment should you insert to replace the code comment? Please see the options. Correct answer is option B. Question is you have a multi-class image classification deep learning model that uses a set of labeled photographs. You create the following code to select hyperparameter values when training the model. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. First statement is hyperparameter combinations for the runs are selected based on how previous samples performed in the previous experiment run. Options are yes or no. Second statement is the learning rate value 0.09 might be used during model training. Options are yes or no. Third statement is you can define an early termination policy for this hyperparameter tuning run. Options are yes or no. Correct answer for the first statement is yes. Correct answer for the second statement is also yes. Correct answer for the third statement is no. Question is, you plan to use a Python script to run an Azure machine learning experiment. The script creates a reference to the experiment run context, loads data from a file, identifies the set of unique values for the label column, and completes the experiment run. The experiment must record the unique labels in the data as metrics for the run that can be reviewed later. You must add code to the script to record the unique label values as run metrics at the point indicated by the comment. Solution: replace the comment with the following code. Does the solution meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is option A, yes. Question is drag and drop. You are creating a machine learning model that can predict the species of a penguin from its measurements. You have a file that contains measurements for 3 species of penguin in comma delimited format. The model must be optimized for area under the received operating characteristic curve performance metric averaged for each class. You need to use the automated machine learning user interface in Azure Machine Learning Studio to run an experiment and find the best performing model. Which 5 actions should you perform in sequence? To answer, move the appropriate actions from the list of actions to the answer area and arrange them in the correct order. Please see this section. And this is the correct answer. Question is, you create a model to forecast weather conditions based on historical data. You need to create a pipeline that runs a processing script to load data from a data store and pass the processed data to a machine learning model training script. Solution: run the following code. Does the solution meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is option B, no. Question is, you have a Python script named train.py in a local folder named scripts. The script trains a regression model by using scikit-learn. The script includes code to load a training data file, which is also located in the scripts folder. You must run the script as an Azure ML experiment on a compute cluster named AML Compute. You need to configure the run to ensure that the environment includes the required packages for model training. You have instantiate a variable named AML Compute that references the target compute cluster. Solution: run the following code. Does the solution meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is option A, yes. Question is drag and drop. You create machine learning models by using Azure Machine Learning. You plan to train and score models by using a variety of compute contexts. You also plan to create a new compute resource in Azure Machine Learning Studio. You need to select the appropriate compute types. Which compute types should you select? To answer, drag the appropriate compute types to the correct requirements. Each compute type may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Please see this section. Question is, you are creating a classification model for a banking company to identify possible instances of credit card fraud. You plan to create the model in Azure Machine Learning by using automated machine learning. The training dataset that you are using is highly unbalanced. You need to evaluate the classification model. Which primary metrics should you use? Option A, normalized underscore mean underscore absolute underscore error. Option B, AUC underscore weighted. Option C, accuracy. Option D, normalized underscore root underscore mean underscore squared underscore error. Option E, Spearman underscore correlation. Correct answer is option B. Question is, you plan to use the hyperdrive feature of Azure Machine Learning to determine the optimal hyperparameter values when training a model. You must use hyperdrive to try combinations of the following hyperparameter values. You must not apply an early termination policy. First, learning underscore rate is any value between 0.001 and zero point 0.1. Second, batch underscore size is 1632 or 64. You need to configure the sampling method for the hyperdrive experiment. Which two sampling methods can you use? Option A, no sampling. Option B, grid sampling. Option C, Bayesian sampling. Option D, random sampling. Correct answer is option C and option D. You can download the complete list of recently updated contents from the link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe.